Hey everybody, this is Al with El Rey Collection. Hope everybody's doing great today. A little bit of clickbait here, but there is a little bit of fun story, and I think a lot of people have asked me about this in the past. So I figured I'd do a video, um, particularly about the PSA guarantee on their graded cards, which I've come to realize is a really important piece of PSA and the differentiation of graded cards. So this particular case is really the story of this card, which is you'll see a scan here in a second, which is the really nice foot 97 Thierry Henry um, sticker. It's really hard to get in high grade, and this particular one was a PSA 9. And I have a couple copies of this in PSA 9, and I was actually in the course of trading it to someone. And which looks great, by the way, if you can just look at this beautiful centering, I'll show you a scan a bit, really nice, sticker front and back, just beautiful. And actually, when I was looking at it, it happened to catch one of these lights that I have up here. You can sometimes see the reflection in my glasses. You can see it sometimes on the shine. And I'll show again this. And at one angle, I saw something, and it looked like a little bit of a bend in the sticker. And I wasn't sure that I saw that right. I had to move the sticker around multiple times. It's even hard for me to re-find it now on this. So here I found it. And I just saw at this one point kind of this indentation at a certain angle. And, that didn't look to me any type of a bend in the sticker isn't going to get a 9. So I told the person, obviously, I was trading with, I said, listen, this is a 9, but, it has a little bend in it. If I was getting this from somebody else in a 9, not sure that I would love that. And so, the person ultimately, said thank you and traded out of the deal. Always buy the card and the sticker, not the holder, but it is important because it's in a very valuable holder. So I decided to try the PSA guarantee as anyone else should, right? So I didn't call anyone that I know. I didn't text Ryan Hodge, who's the president, or get in touch with Nat Turner. I basically just said, hey, what's the normal process? Let's walk through the process. Let's see how it goes. And here's kind of a report from that whole process. So hopefully you'll find this useful. So the terms, as you can see, I'm kind of like ending the story with my clickbait here. I ultimately ended up with a check of more than $10,000 for the sticker because of their guarantee, which obviously is very valuable as opposed to like a Beckett that doesn't really do anything and won't even authenticate stickers that we know or make right on stickers that we know are fake. But without further ado, let me walk through the process, and then I'd love to hear your comments at the bottom. And then I'd love to respond to them because I think this is a true differentiator for PSA, but it's also not perfect. So let's walk through this. So the having a problem here. Okay, here you go. So the terms and conditions, you can see right here. It's a PSA card / financial guarantee. You can see the terms and conditions. Go ahead and look at them yourself. Importantly, it doesn't cover clerical errors. Like if clearly it's a PSA 1 and they type in PSA 10, if it's a reprint and they say that's a Mantle rookie 52 Mantle, but it was clearly a reprint, you should be able to see those types of things. Those are kind of clerical errors. They also, if you had a holder that was a PSA 10 and it sat in water or was in a fire or something, or the holder's broken, they won't cover that. Makes sense. They won't cover you know, actually I misspelled Topps Chrome, but Topps Chrome, you know how sometimes it greens on the top, so they won't cover those, which they deem manufacturing defects. They won't cover something for a change in the set registry. Oh, this was part of the rookie set. Now it's no longer part. They're not going to compensate you for that. And interestingly, they have this broad category, what's called, changes in hobby standing information. They use the example of the Allen Ginter dates, in the 1800s, where from certain years the years shift. So that's not part of the guarantee, and that's kind of important to keep in mind too, because that can shift rookie designations. And just because you lost an item, it was stolen or it was damaged, none of that stuff's included. So it's really for cases where there's a legit grading error of a legit, sticker in the right holder that hasn't been damaged, and they just missed something, and they're like, "Hey, listen, mea culpa, missed something, need to fix it. So let's go about fixing it." So how do you do this? Well, number one, again, here's my case in particular. So, again, ready to trade this card. And then you can see in this video here, or hopefully you can here, I'll use my pointer. There's this divot here on the left-hand side of the card. Again, when you look at it straight on, you couldn't see this, and you had to get it in a certain light. And this is a relatively old number by grading number, PSA number, 213-64653. So you can see this is in a 9, or it wasn't a 9, and now this one, Steal My Own Thunder, is in a 5. So this was, again, I noticed that it had this little, divot, and then I'm like, okay, it didn't show up on any of the scans that I had. And so I just wanted to get, closer and see what the process looked like. So because of that, I went to the Customer Resource Center on PSA's website, and I put that I wanted a quality assurance. This is the third one, a quality assurance request. And then I typed in, what was wrong with it, and I put the cert number, and I attached the scans, and particularly I also attached that side picture where you could see it. And so I did this. It's in December. I'll show all the dates later to give you an idea of how long this took. And then, kind of nothing happened. It went into the abyss, for a while. And then, ultimately I get a call kind of out of the blue. And actually, there were two calls. One was a verification call to say, "Hey, we want to understand what your problem is." And I said, "The problem is pretty clear on the scan. Not sure if you got it, but if, there's this indentation on the side of the sticker." And I said, "Here is copies from your website that showed the last 2 sales of the sticker. Granted, one is in 2022, and this is 2024 for 16.8 thousand, and then one in 2023 for 13,000 on eBay. This is what shows up on your website. So I think that's the most relevant comp, and I think that your sticker, this should be reimbursed at a $13,000 level because it's not a PSA 9." So they come back with me and they initially say, "Listen, number one, you're right. The sticker is not a 9. That divot is not something on the scan, not an optical illusion. It's real. It's on the side. And we think we should, compensate you for that in $10,000. And I'm like, "Why, if your website has the last 2 sales being 17 and 13?" And I've been on the other side of this when they upcharge me as well. PSA upcharges me. They're using this data, and suddenly now they're saying, even though the last comp's 13,000, they're saying that they will only pay me 10. So I number one, I'm very respectful in these communications. I also recognize they hold most of the cards. If you look at the terms and conditions, it's very subjective to their processes. Um, so I got another call where they were walking through why they thought $10,000 made sense. And I, was not at my desk. I didn't have, access to data. And I told them, I'd get back with them in an email. So ultimately, I responded below. You guys probably can't read this on the thing, but I basically said, hey, thanks for the call. Looking at it, I thought the $10,000 offer was a little light. The recent sale was from eBay in August 2023, was for 13,000, and I believe that the soccer market has generally rebounded from that low. And we really haven't climbed to the level of the 2022 sale, which was close to 17. But I feel like, things are better now than they were in August of 2023. That was my position. So I didn't hear from them again for a bit. And then when they finally came back to me, they said they came back with data, and they came back interestingly with data that wasn't on their website, particularly a PWCC sale that I hadn't seen. It wasn't on their website, but actually is on the PWCC website because it was labeled incorrectly. It was labeled as a 97, and it shows up as $7,500. And so they basically say, listen, the average of the last two sales is 10,000. That's where we got the number. And we have reason to believe, because the PSA 8s have been continuing to fall from their highs, that there's reason to believe there'd be downside to the $10,000. But at the same time, we recognize kind of the premium on higher grade items, and we think that the 10,000 is basically fair based on the $7,500 sale, which I hadn't known of when I sent the card in, and in the context of what's happening from the 8s, because the PSA 8s had gone from 9,000 down to 1.7 thousand in January of 24. The lowest, they and it's been kind of a ratchet down, and that was kind of hitting kind of a new low in the most recent comp. So there's kind of like no avoiding the fact that the 8s hadn't done well. Now a 9 can be a different market from an 8, right? But in general, that's something that had kind of been happening. And when you're negotiating with them, I think what you want to do is you want to be always calm, right? But you also want to make your points and see where you can navigate around, and what counterpoints you can have, not unlike what you do in the upcharge situation where you're on different sides. They're trying to make the case that it's a very valuable thing. You're trying to make a case that is less valuable, so that you hopefully get to some fair place. Honestly, I think they jam you a lot on the upcharges. It's happened to me a number of times, and I think that it actually passes to the point of not being fair. But in general, I think you need to have data-driven, discussions here. And they had a lot of data. Obviously, they own Card Ladder, and they sent it, to me. They sent this data to me to try to convince me that their number was fair. I kept, pressing on this, and ultimately they made a number of additional points. They said, hey, listen, the one that sold for 13, from 9 months ago, more or less, was had one bid on eBay, and they're like, we don't trust that nearly as much as the one from PwC that had 54 bids and still closed at 7,500. I countered with the fact that the year was wrong on the PwC C1, and so that probably drove down the bids, and that I think it should be way closer to the 13,000. But if it was a little bit below that, I'd probably think that was somewhat fair. In the end, and I have a bunch of typos now that I realize this on the screen. We sign on to their terms and conditions. We don't sing on to their terms and conditions, but we sign on to their terms and conditions, and we don't have a ton of cards. They were also using multiple sources, not just what's on their website, but they were using TerraPeak and PwC histories, which don't show up generally on their websites. So just be aware of that as part of the process. So in the end, they offered to a number of things. They offered, cash compensation in the neighborhood of, not in the neighborhood exactly, of 10,750, and returning this card in a PSA 5. Again, this was relatively low, relatively low versus the last comp. In some ways, knowing that they hold most of the cards here, and I don't want to go into arbitration or anything like that. I kind of rationalize myself to say, well, if it's, if this is a $750 card and a sticker, then that's basically 11,500. And then if I was to sell it at auction, there'd probably, be some fees associated with that. So it's close enough to the 13,000, in kind of a net format, for that particular, sticker. So that's kind of how I rationalized it to myself. I knew they have the benefit of the terms and conditions on their side. They have all the data, and I didn't want a protracted fight, with PSA in general, because actually I do feel like in the process they were trying to be fair. They were trying to use, base data, and of course use it to their advantage, but also, present it in a reasonable way that I was able to double check. So, what did the process in total look like? Well, I did my CRC submission in early December 5th. In January, they, as I mentioned before, they reach out and they say, hey, what's wrong with the sticker? Just to verify what I thought I saw in the scans and what I had put in my submission. And then, I talked with the rep from PSA multiple times in February, but there was no written correspondence. And he ultimately made me an offer based on his discussion with the pricing group. And we ultimately concluded on some sort of, an agreement, again, pretty much all by phone, with exception of as we were closing in on when they were sending information about data, or, we were finally kind of close to an agreement, and, finally kind of agree on what I would take on March 1st. Then I receive this card back on March 12th, after that, but I don't have a check, and I don't have any agreement. I actually execute the DocuSign agreement after receiving my card back in PSA 5, which was a little disconcerting. That's not usually what you do. Usually you sign a contract, and then you would get, after you sign the contract, your card and the check back. But ultimately, I executed the DocuSign after March 12th. I forget the actual date. Couldn't find it in here quickly. But I actually had the card back before in my PSA 5, and I haven't really signed any agreement, which makes me nervous. And it's kind of sloppy from a process perspective. They ultimately mailed the check to me on April 4th, and I actually received the check on April 8th. So it basically took 4 months from the time I uploaded my scan to the time there was resolution. And in that period, there was an unfavorable comp that came in and kind of complicated my negotiation back from that point that I actually sent the scans in. So, I would say that it's certainly made and it's fair. I think that they take their time understanding it, looking at it, ultimately, sending the item back into them. And it's going to take some time for them to make the decision. Then they probably have to go through multiple levels of approval. They have to go through some research. So I expected it to take a while. I'm not sure 4 months is super reasonable, but at the same time, this probably aren't types of checks they're writing every day, so it probably went through a couple other levels. I'm hypothesizing there again. I haven't mentioned this to anybody that I know at PSA. I just wanted to see how the general process worked. So at the end, you know, here are my kind of takeaways from the process. Going through this process takes time, 4 months in my case. It's pretty much all in PSA hands and is subject to their terms and conditions. I generally perceive the process as fair and data driven. I mean, of course, there's going to be a tilt to PSA. All these people work there, just like the upcharges tilt to them, not typically in the collector's favor. But super importantly, nobody else has this type of guarantee, and is a huge reason to buy PSA graded cards as opposed to others. I mean, I bought this card, years ago. Obviously, it accelerated in value. And now that I recognize in just a freak chance, the off white, because the centering and everything, when I look at this, looked amazing. I just saw that quick notch, and that matters in soccer cards. So the fact that they're willing to step up with a card that I don't know when they graded this, probably 15 years ago, the fact they're willing to get up and pay a collector what it's worth today when they realize the mistake is huge in my eyes. Even if it's not actually perfectly 100% of market, it's in the neighborhood, and I generally think, I mean, that's way more you get from the competition. The process in general, slightly more opaque than I would have liked. These phone calls instead of email, so there's not written documentation. The valuation's always a discussion, especially on rare cards that don't trade that often. Going to be a little tough. I mean, this isn't a PSA 9 Ken Griffey Jr. rookie that you can go back and find, 15 sales in the last 7 days. So I get it. It becomes a little nebulous there. Definitely didn't like receiving the card back prior to signing the release, because I got this card back that used to be a 9 and a 5. So what if they change the terms on me? I would basically be screwed. This would be a 5. Of course, they didn't. But if it was a nebulous person or manager or whatever, you can see the narrative that's a little sloppy in my eyes. You probably want to lock it down before you change the sticker. Have the contract. I could have still sold it as a PSA 9 and sold it with the guarantee to somebody else. So that's still kind of my right until we actually agree on compensation. So I'd prefer if you got your card back together with a check. That seems like it makes the most sense. And then PSA doesn't really market this guarantee extensively, and I get it because can you imagine having to go through, everybody wants to get a little bit of money, and so there's 10,000 different people uploading to the website every day about my car's undergraded, my car's overgraded, my car's overgraded, pay me, pay me, pay me. That could really grind things to a halt. And I think it's intended to be, legitimate mistakes of valuable cards that, need to be corrected. And I think for that, it kind of gets it checks those boxes. So I think that that's important. You know, I totally get why it's not front and center on their website, and they generally talk about a guarantee and they talk about this. But I do understand from a business perspective why it wouldn't be the first thing you see. Challenge your grade on the website. No, of course not. I mean, you have to have a really compelling argument, upload a lot of things, so you kind of get a fair shake when in fact there's something legitimate to talk about. So, and again, I didn't enlist the help support of anyone I know at PSA or collectors because I just wanted to go through the process, and I generally think the process was pretty fair. So in the end, when this process started in December, I had a PSA 9. Now I have a PSA 5 and $10,750,000 in the bank. It's the same sticker. It's a beautiful sticker. It's just changed its house a little bit. Now it's got the PSA mark here. And it's in a 5 instead of a 9. Same thing. And I feel okay with it because more than anything, because I don't like the fact of overgraded stickers being out there. And I think, would I still prefer to have the 9? I think I would, but this is a close enough correction that in the end I'm okay with it. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you're okay with it. What would you prefer? Maybe some people are like, hell yeah, great deal. Or maybe others are like, man, you took it on the chin there, took one for the team. You shouldn't have done it. I don't really like, even with graded cards, because it's happened to me a couple times where people sell me or trade me something, and then I get it, and I look at something, I'm like, oof, that's rough. I mean, it says a 5, but man, I see some paper loss on there. Should have been a 2. Why didn't you say something? I feel a little burned on people. Especially when you can't see errors on scans, and if you look at these two scans, they look the same because they are the same from that angle. It takes a very particular angle to see kind of what's wrong with it. So anyway, that's how it ended for me. That was my end game. Would love to hear what you guys think in the comments below, and hopefully at least you learn a little bit about the process. Again, I even before this process, I thought that security of the PSA guarantee was very valuable for the hobby, and now I'm even more convinced that this is a real reason to pay more for PSA slabs when you're buying things on the third market, and on the in the market out there. And I also think that it's a reason to grade directly with PSA, although it won't apply to you. But when you move stickers on, that value creation goes back into the market. So I really hope PSA doesn't get away from this. I think is a huge differentiator, for them. And hopefully they don't have so many cases of this so that it's not onerous on their profit and loss statement. So this continues to be, one of the real differentiating pieces of PSA in the market. So anyway, hope you guys learned something about my process. I hope it's helpful to you. And until next time, we will see you out on the Discord. Hey, if you can, please also like this video and subscribe. And we will see you out there in the market. Good luck collecting, everyone. Bye.